Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn has his coordinators now. And could Caleb Williams be on his way to DC after the draft? We're going to talk about that and more next on Washington Football Maniacs. Welcome back to Washington Football Maniacs. This is your host, Brandon Scott. Rolling solo today. Definitely co-host Greg Sykes is down with an illness, so definitely keep him in your thoughts and prayers. But big news in the DMV. The Washington Commanders have hired their offensive and defensive coordinator. And with the link at offensive coordinator, could Caleb Williams be on his way to DC? So we're going to talk about that. So let's definitely get into it. So big news. Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn, he has now hired his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, as the Washington Commanders have hired Kliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator and Whitt Jr. as the defensive coordinator. So let's get into a little bit of background with Kliff Kingsbury. Now, he is age 44. As a head coach at with the Arizona Cardinals, he compiled a record of 28-31 with one tie. He was a senior offensive analyst for USC last season, so there's that link to Caleb Williams. And he has worked with quarterbacks such as Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, and Caleb Williams, obviously, at USC. So this is, in my opinion, this is a really big hire. Why? Because, look, obviously, the new ownership, the new front office, they want to draft a quarterback. But then you also have an experienced quarterback in Sam Howell as the backup, presumably as the backup in DC. So Kliff Kingsbury knows how to work with quarterbacks. He knows how to get the best out of quarterbacks. And you look at his offense, we're not dealing with the bare minimum in the offense. You know, obviously we got some moves to make, especially with the offensive line. But you have a guy who knows how to work with quarterbacks, get the best out of quarterbacks. And I definitely believe this hire is a really good one, because this offense is going to look more dynamic. Now, it's nothing against Eric Bieniemy, obviously, with the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy is going to be coaching somewhere else. Now, talking about Eric Bieniemy real quick, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs, he had a reputation, but then also, you know, as far as running play calling, but the biggest thing was discipline. Now, not every player liked it. There was a lot of friction. As far as play calling, did he utilize the guys around him? I don't believe so. He didn't. I don't believe he ran the ball enough, and the offense seemed stagnant at times. So, was there a need to make a change at offensive coordinator? I mean, I was willing to go through another year of Eric Bieniemy, because I believe that he does know what he's doing. It's just, my biggest thing was, I don't think he really utilized the talent he had in Washington, D.C., and still played, still called plays as if it was still Kansas City. So I still think that he can coach in the NFL. I think he can be a really good coordinator, but the Washington Commanders decided to go in another direction, and Kliff Kingsbury is the new offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. And like I said, I'm very, very, very happy with this move, because I think he's really going to kick this offense in a high gear. I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued with the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury. So, like I said, he has experience in Arizona with Kyler Murray. He's worked with Johnny Manziel. Not that the Johnny Manziel saga ended the right way, but the talent was there. He worked with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, and he's got the connection to Caleb Williams. So let's move on to our defensive coordinator, as the Washington Commanders have also hired Whitt Jr. as the defensive coordinator. Now, we're going to give you a little background into Whitt Jr. He is age 45. He most recently was a secondary coach and defensive passing game coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. So he worked with Dan Quinn in Dallas. He also had previous roles with the Atlanta Falcons and the Green Bay Packers. So, again, you know, he is familiar with working with Dan Quinn. Now, as far as being a defensive coordinator, he doesn't have an extensive history, but he is familiar with working with Dan Quinn. I think that, you know, when it comes to chemistry, you often talk about chemistry amongst players, right? But there's chemistry amongst coaches, and I think that the fact that he has worked with Dan Quinn previously in Dallas, I think that I'm willing to take a flyer and see how he can do a defensive coordinator. Because, again, you know, Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded head coach. So he's going to have all the support in the world in the building with Dan Quinn there. And obviously he's going to have the support of the front office and ownership. So I think this is definitely a good move. We'll see what he can do at defensive coordinator, because Can he do any worse than Jack Del Rio? Now, nothing against Jack Del Rio. Was it all his fault? No. But changes were needed. And I think that if you look at it, the fact that this franchise has revitalized itself from the top down. New owner, Dan Snyder's out of here. New general manager, Adam Peters. He knows what he's doing. Now you got a head coach who has head coach experience, playoff experience, and Dan Quinn. Kliff Kingsbury is going to get a lot out of the quarterback room. When whether it's Drake May, whether it's Caleb Williams, whether it's Jaden Daniels, he's going to get the most out of the quarterback room, especially Sam Howell. And looking at Joe Whitt Jr., Joe Whitt Jr. I definitely think that he can come in and obviously, look, he's got a lot to learn, but he's got to, he has a history of working with Dan Quinn. So Dan Quinn is definitely going to show him the ropes of being a defensive coordinator. So again, everybody, big moves for the Washington Commanders, hiring our new offensive coordinator in Kliff Kingsbury and our defensive coordinator and Joe Whitt Jr. So definitely show them your support, and let's keep this thing moving because next is the NFL draft and free agency. So talking about the NFL draft now, could Caleb Williams fall to number 2? Could there be a trade between the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears? Now, there are reports out there that Caleb Williams does not look at Chicago as a destination. So, in saying that and looking at his history and connection to Kliff Kingsbury, could I see the Washington Commanders maybe trading up to the number 1 pick or Caleb Williams falling to number 2? I think both scenarios are plausible. Looking at scenario number 1, could we trade up? Absolutely. There's been a few proposals out there, but most of them we're giving up obviously the second overall pick. I believe it was the 40th pick and next year's number 1. So there's a lot of different trades out there, but I think it's not like the RG3 trade, moving up to get RG3. I think, we're not going to have to give up the amount of assets we did with RG3 to the St. Louis Rams, which ended up being a disaster in the long run. But I definitely think it's plausible that we can move up to the 1 because you're only moving up 1 spot. Now, could Caleb Williams realistically fall to number 2? Yes. I mean, Justin Fields, you look like they might have confidence in Justin Fields being the quarterback going forward. The fact that, they need a guy opposite of DJ Moore on the other side, you could see Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 1. Could they trade down? So there's a lot of scenarios, but I think that getting the quarterback of the future and Caleb Williams, obviously a DC native, born and bred here, with the high school here, I think there's a good chance to do that. I think that if you have the chance to go up and get Caleb Williams, now I get it. The opinions kind of vary when it comes to a lot of the quarterbacks in this draft. A lot of people love Caleb Williams. There's people that don't. There's people that love and hate Drake May, Jane Daniels. I mean, Penix. The list goes on. But there's a lot of quarterback talent in this draft. So I think that if you're a team that needs a quarterback, whether to step in automatically or to be developed and be the quarterback of the future, this is definitely the draft for you. So looking at the Washington Commanders, again, look, Caleb Williams is a local guy. Now, that doesn't always mean success with Washington sports, right? Obviously, Chase Young's no longer with the team. He was a local guy, didn't work out. If you look at other sports, Kevin Durant never came to DC to play for the Wizards. And there's been a few guys who are local that came to play here, but it's not always a given that local people want to play for the home team. And it's not always, sometimes influences can be worse at home than it is playing in another city. So, again, there's plus and minuses with having a hometown guy. But with Caleb Williams, you got a guy who, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people, he's pro ready. He's ready to come in, be that guy at quarterback. Now, obviously, with the cap room we have going forward, with the draft picks we have going forward, we have the ability to build up the O-line, go get some weapons, rebuild the defense, and with a new head coach who's defensive minded, give the defense a new identity and get some fire into the defense. So we have an opportunity this offseason to rebuild this team. We have the opportunity to really maybe be competitive within the first or second year of this rebuild. Because if you look at, again, both me and Greg covered it, the NFC East is in turmoil right now. New York, Daniel Jones is the guy going forward. Do they do what it takes to surround him with the talent needed to really give him a chance to succeed in New York? And obviously there's issues with the coaching staff, coaches fighting each other. So New York, what's going on with the Giants? Philly, Sirianni, how long's the leash that they give Sirianni? Jalen Hurts, is he still viewed as the guy going forward? And looking at Dallas, is Dak still the guy, going forward? And how long is the leash that they give McCarthy? So there's a lot of questions in the NFC East. And I think that if you look at the fact that brand new owner, brand new GM, brand new head coach, brand new coordinators, cap room, draft picks, new identity, I mean, I think this team is primed to rebuild itself and jump into the race, the NFC East race next season. So, could Kalen Williams be a target for the Washington Commanders? Absolutely. So, I definitely think that you could. There's a good chance he could come to DC. Obviously, Chicago. He does not want to go to Chicago. And with Justin Fields, does the Chicago Bears necessarily need to make a move for quarterback? Because you can argue that Justin Fields, with the right amount of help around him, can be a franchise quarterback for the Bears. And then looking at the Commanders, obviously they're leaning towards drafting the quarterback. So Caleb Williams will be a really good move. Now, could they succeed with Drake May? Absolutely. Could they succeed with Jaden Daniels? Absolutely. Now, to me, the two most pro-ready quarterbacks in this draft are Caleb Williams and Drake May. Now, in my humble opinion, Jaden Daniels is high upside. Reminds you a lot of Lamar Jackson, but he has to be developed. And the other quarterbacks in the draft, the quarterback coming out of Michigan, Penix coming out of the University of Washington, are they pro ready? We'll see. But to me, the two most pro ready quarterbacks that the Commanders should definitely consider taking at number 2 or 1 if they move up is Caleb Williams and Drake May, in my opinion, because they are pro ready and they are ready to roll. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and end there. Before we roll, if you are not a member of the Washington Football Maniacs, definitely consider it, man. We got a lot of good content. We got a lot of special guests coming on the show within the next month or so. So definitely tune in. And going to the offseason, man, me and Greg, we're going to be very heavy in draft profiles, looking at a lot of draft prospects. We're going to have guests on talking about the draft. And we're going to be talking about free agency. So definitely we have a lot of fun on here. So definitely consider being a member of the Washington Football Maniacs. Like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the offensive and defensive coordinator hirings. And should Caleb Williams be the target in this year's draft at quarterback for the Washington Commanders? So again, my co-host, my guy, Greg Sykes, is still out with the illness. So man, definitely keep him in your prayers. Definitely hope he gets well soon. And big news in DC again, as the Washington Commanders again have hired Kliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator and Whitt Jr. as defensive coordinator. And that rounds out a brand new staff in the 202, aka Washington, D.C. So again, appreciate everybody. Hail to the Commanders and peace. See you guys next time.